Thank you and good evening. My voyage actually started with a TEDx in 2009 in Dubai, on to New York, and then on to TED proper after they heard me and brought me in. So I'm going to share with you part of my journey, what I call moving the cultural needle, which I've been working on for over 20 years. And some of you might know some of my stuff, not all of my stuff, but I'm going to bring it all into perspective. I'm somebody who, when I was 9 years old, told my parents that when I grew up I was going to be a writer, and they said, that's a great hobby. Don't think about doing it and actually it was good advice, and you'll see why. So I started basically, I'm a reader. I used to read anything I got my hands onto, but everything I read was in English. And I had this distinct idea that I just did not like the Arabic language. I just did not like it. And so because I read in English, I wrote in English. And so I used to write for the Kuwait Times and the Arab Times, and my friends would say, who are you writing for? The cooks and the maids, ha ha ha. And this was back in the early 90s, and back then, without the internet, your voice really didn't go outside the borders of Kuwait when you're writing in English. Right? And the internet changed all that for me. And so I wrote in English, and what happened when I was 25, I came home to my parents with a copy of this book, Cities Assault, written in Arabic, written in English. And my mother said, you're Arab, he's Arab, how dare you put a translator between you? And I said, no, but she said, finish, we're done. You're reading this in Arabic. And I said, okay. And I read it, and I was surprised because the words I didn't understand because I just didn't know the word. I understood in context, and I actually enjoyed reading the book. I finished all his books, then went on to Taha Hussein, Najib Mahfoud, and I realized that my problem wasn't with the Arabic language. My problem was with the Ministry of Information that kept banning the books that would appeal to somebody who thought like me. And so you had to buy these books like you're buying drugs in the back store, in the back door of a bookshop, right? They're not allowed. And that got me thinking, and at that time I had a choice to make. Am I going to contribute to culture or language? And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to contribute to culture. Language is out of it for me right now. And because of this, we have things like Superman and Spider-Man, right? Or we have things like Turkish and Mexican TV shows translated into Arabic. And the reason for that is producers aren't stupid, right? Because if you have to spend millions of dollars on a new show, and somebody is offended and they take it off the TV, what happens? You lose all that money. But if all you've done is spend $50,000 translating and they take it off the air, no harm, no foul. And so in the name of preserving our culture, we have been slowly and systematically destroying it by allowing other cultures to use their content here in the Arabic language. And even one of their stories that are well known, like for example, Aladdin, one of the most famous stories ever told. Who told this to the rest of the world? Was it us? No, it was Disney, right? And when it first came out, the opening lines went like this. Oh, I come from a land from a faraway place where the caravan camels roam, where they cut off your ears but they don't like your face, it's barbaric, but hey, it's home. Right? So it took a lot of kind of protests in the US for the DVD version to come out differently. Okay? And this is the problem. When you're not the one telling your story, you're not going to end up being the hero in it. Somebody else is going to be. Okay? So it's very important to be able to tell your story and to be the one telling it. So why is the Pope up there? So there's a very distinct relationship between language and religion that we haven't been able to get through in this part of the world. And what I'm going to share with you now is my thinking. So I was one of the people there was a group that met for a year in Dubai under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid for the modernization of the teaching of Arabic. And this was the Sheikh Al-Azhar and somebody from Harvard, and there was me, who doesn't speak Arabic. Oh, I speak Arabic, but the email comes in Fusha and I reply in English. But Sheikh Mohammed had me there because of the way I thought, and this was my contribution. For over 1,000 years, religion in Europe was based in Latin. And so what happened over the years is language grows. And so you had what's called vulgar Latin, the Latin of the lower classes. French, Italian, that stuff. Right? And so with the years, the only people who controlled Latin were the church. And less people had access to classical Latin. And so the Pope was able to do things like sell plots in heaven. See, it says it right here. Right? So what happened and what broke the relationship there is King Henry, who really wanted that divorce. Right? Translated the Bible into English. Martin Luther translated into German, all of a sudden Europe woke up. You know how we grow up saying, the Muslims are on top of the world and the Europeans were sleeping and now we're sleeping. What happened? This is what happened. Because when the language was broken, the relationship between language and culture was broken, and all of a sudden Europe was able to think in the language they spoken, and wrote in the same language. But for us, we went backwards. We went backwards because every prophet came to his people with a miracle. The prophet Moses could turn a stick into a snake because that was the language of the day, magic. But our prophet said, Muhammad ﷺ, his miracle was the language in which the Quran came. But if your miracle is language, and language evolves, what do you do? So as a culture, we shackled it. Nahu, balagha, all these rules to keep it from growing, and we therefore destroyed the relationship between thought, language, and the written word. And so we teach our kids in a language that they don't speak at school, they don't speak at home, right? And gave control of religion to those who control the classical Arabic. So, I'm 23, I come back to Kuwait after college, and a man just gets fired from his job at the Jamiat al-Mansouriya, the Mansouriya co-op, because of his religion as a dry cleaner, because apparently your religion dictates how well you dry clean. And to make matters worse, the guy that fired him gave out leaflets to the community apologizing. Had he known this guy's religion, he wouldn't have hired him to begin with. And I thought, oh my God. So I wrote about this in the Kuwait Times for the maids and the cooks. And it didn't hit the spot. So I wrote and illustrated my first book, intended for adults. But it won an award from UNESCO for children's literature. So I was happy and confused. But the book was very simple. It's about land called Bouncy Land, where everybody's round. In that society, they judge you based on two values: how high you bounce and how fast you roll. That's it. The main character is the one who has a half circle, can't do either, he's ostracized. They make fun of him, he tries to change, it doesn't work. At the end, though, his difference ends up saving everybody. He's a half circle, so he becomes a boat, and he saves them one by one, because they can't control themselves in water. And he forces society to reevaluate the importance of diversity. Book does well, it's in its 5th printing. Book 2 comes out. Book 2 is about a land called Rainbow Land, where they judge you. They're all half circles, but they're more sophisticated in their prejudice. They judge you based on the color of your bow tie and where it is on the rainbow. So red is better than orange, better than yellow, all the way down to violet, the worst place in society. They have marriage laws, as any good society might. If you have a red bow tie, you can't marry somebody with a blue ribbon, because what does red and blue give you? Yeah, purple. Last place on the rainbow, right? Cross-cultural, cross-religious, cross-ethnic, cross-tribal, whatever you want marriages. So he asked them why they live their life in that way, and they point up to the sky and say it's the natural order of things. So he points to the reflection of the rainbow in the river and shows them what's on top is now on the bottom. No one is better than anybody on that basis. That book does well. Book 3 gets banned, and I quit writing at the age of 27 and come back with the 99 5 years later. So book 3 is about a land called Thailand, spelled T-I-E. In Thailand, all the Thailanders are big, they're huge, they're grandiose, and they have this law: they can't wear new ties, they have to wear the tie of their father, who wears the tie of his father before him. So, the main character wants to go visit this place, he goes, and for some reason, nobody knows why, all the Thailanders are now the same size as everybody else. They ain't so grand anymore, they're just normal people. But because of their laws, they can't buy new ties. So they have to wear the tie of their father, who wore the tie of his father before him. So it's a tie of the past. But because they're small now, their ties are disproportionate to their body size. So when they roll, their ties get under them, make them slow and inefficient. And those that bounce, their ties cover their eyes, they don't know where they're going to land. And those that take off their ties in protest get shunned. And so Bouncy Jr., the main character, asked to see the law, and the law says you must wear of the ties of your fathers, not the ties of your fathers. So they get every tailor in town, every tie in town, and cut out new ties to better serve their modern day needs. So I get asked point blank at the Ministry of Information, this is about the Quran, isn't it? And I said, huh? I said, these books are intended to reflect the reader's mind. Clearly it worked, right? But do you think somebody reading this in Tokyo or Washington is going to think Quran? No, it's about tradition and modernity. I wrote this when my first son was my wife was pregnant with him. So it was about for him. Didn't work, I quit writing, but truth be told, I changed a couple of words that got published, but I was too proud. The 99. So 9/11 happens. I'm 30 years old. I'm sick and tired of complaining that nobody's doing anything. I want to do something. And so I thought, if I go back to the same fabric that the bad guys are pulling out their intolerant messages and create positive, multicultural, tolerant messages, then the problem is not Islam anymore, the problem is them. And so I went back and created superheroes based on 99 attributes of Allah in the Quran, things like generosity, wisdom, foresight, etc. And the idea was like this, for over 100 years, Hollywood's been using the Bible for archetypes. So, for example, Superman's parents die in Krypton, just like the prophets. Batman's parents die when he's 6. Spider-Man is raised by his own uncle. And all of them get a message from above through a messenger. Batman, sees a bat flying over his head and sees it as a sign. Superman is sent by his parents to new parents on a boat in a small ship, right? And so it's like Moses on the Nile, and you hear the voice of his father saying to Earth, "I have sent to you my only son." Right? And the reason for that is there's a Western conspiracy. I'm kidding, okay. The Bible is known as the greatest story ever told. 1 billion people transact in that language. And so Hollywood builds new stories on an older architecture. So you think, Simba and Lion King, Tarzan, it's all the same story. And we go back for more and more because we like stories that are told in that way. So I said, nobody's applied these principles to the Quran except the bad guys. I want to be the face of this. And so I started this project. We got amazing, amazing reviews all over the world, tens of thousands of articles, 2 documentary films about my life, one on PBS in the US called Wham Bam Islam, one on Norwegian television. The 99 theme park in Kuwait was there for 7 years. In Jahra, we had IP. We sold rights into Turkey and Spain where they were creating stuff based on our stuff. The comic books came out in 12 languages. The TV show became the first IP from the region to go global. We put Saudi and Iranian superheroes on American television. Okay? So, and without talking about it, we just kind of just did it. Okay? And so the TV show was an amazing thing. But one thing that I'm very proud of, so I have 6 boys, and in the West they say, what about the girls? I say, we don't talk about them. If I had a girl, I'd tell you. I have 6 boys. So my boy Rakan, who's my number 5, when he was born on January 1st, 2009, on New Year's Day, my dad called me and said, I want you to call him Barack. And I said, no. Obama's going to be president in 20 days. And then somebody else called and said, boy or girl? I said, what do you think? He said, another boy. I said, yes. He goes, now you have enough boys to liberate Palestine. And I thought, what happened to playing basketball, right? And so I took those 2 thoughts and wove them into an op-ed called Barack Al-Mutawa about why I would not name my son Barack. Who publishes this? The Chicago Tribune, so the New York Times of Illinois, Obama's hometown state. When did they publish it? On the 20th of Jan, the day he became president. What pages? The op-ed pages. So he read it. That same day, Marvel releases a copy of Spider-Man with Obama on the cover, a signal to the world that Obama likes comic books, which I didn't know, but more importantly, Paul Levitz, the head of DC Comics, my friend, didn't know either. So I spoke to Paul and I said, Paul, Marvel beat you guys. He said, I know. I said, I have an idea to get them back. He said, how? I said, how about when Obama reaches out to the Muslim world, my characters reach back out to the Justice League? And they hadn't done something like that in 15 years. And last time was Marvel, and who was I? But you never know what you can get till you ask for it. He liked it. 6 books came out and sold out, having my characters working with Batman, Superman, and a Wonder Woman who found her clothes after 70 years of looking. They were there. They were there. So these books did really well. Some people were very impressed by them, some people not. But let's hear first from somebody who was very impressed by the idea.
Over the past year, the United States has been reaching out and listening. We've joined interfaith dialogues and held town halls, roundtables and listening sessions with thousands of people around the world, including many of you. And like so many people, you've extended your hand in return, each in your own way, as entrepreneurs and educators, as leaders of faith and of science. I have to say, perhaps the most innovative response was from Dr. Naif Al-Mutawa of Kuwait, who joins us here tonight. Where is Dr. Mutawa? Right here. His comic books have captured the imagination of so many young people with superheroes who embody the teachings and tolerance of Islam. After my speech in Cairo, he had a similar idea. So in his comic books, Superman and Batman reached out to their Muslim counterparts. And I hear they're making progress, too. Absolutely.
So what could possibly go wrong? Everything. My mother always told me, be careful who your friends are because you're going to inherit their enemies. Boy, did he have enemies. So in the US, they came after me. I became known as an evil Arab American terrorist, to which my reply on Twitter was, I can't believe you called me American. Call me evil, that's subjective, but I'm not American, okay? So what happened next was we got our first fatwa from Fox News. Obama's Muslim, this proves it. He's brainwashing your kids using Sharia superheroes. My favorite criticism was we can't let the Muslims brainwash our children like the Mexicans did with Dora the Explorer. This happened. You can't make this stuff up. Okay? And you know who they voted for, right? Anyway, a little aside. But I had problems here too. And the problems here started with somebody who tried to become famous coming after me. And so he sued me. We have to stop the show before it comes out. He's going to infect our kids' minds. But he was 2 years after the show finished. So he just got the news. So the government ignored him. And then he asked for a fatwa from Saudi. And he got it. Now the fatwa, if you don't know what a fatwa is the answer to a question without checking the contents of the question. So what the sheikh said was absolutely correct. The problem is he lied to them. And so basically, this started an avalanche of, he came back after me again. Another fatwa came out of Kuwait. And then it was, who's going to kill Naif on Twitter. My mom found out front page of Watan. Okay? Daesh gave me 3 days to live. I went through a trial for blasphemy. And if you've ever been through one of those, I doubt you've been through one of those. But it was about as civil as one could be. It was a year and a half. It was very stressful. I won. And then they appealed and I won again. But the idea was but in the middle of this was very confusing because in Kuwait I was being sued for this. And meanwhile, Sheikh Mohammed brings me back to Dubai and gives me the Islamic Economy Award for the same project that I was being sued for in Kuwait. Okay? So confusing times, definitions are being rewritten, and inshallah it's going in the right direction, the cultural needle is moving forward. So how do you apply this? What do you do when you get 2 fatwas and death threats? I went back to basics. I went back to bouncy. And I wrote the prequel. Watching Harim al-Sultan, I just drew it and wrote it. And this was my reply. Basically, we go to a land where there are no triangles. They're all circles. And one of them bumps into a triangle. Says, ouch, what's this? So they have a meeting and they decide all the boys from now on wear the triangles on their chins. Yeah. And all the girls wear them on their head. Oh, it was good for a while, but it got itchy. So some of them went into a back room and said, you know what, let's take triangles off and play around. And so they played around and found out that if they do the triangles together, they can make bow ties and ribbons. It was all good. But the elders said no. So they drew a line in the sand, and if you want to do the bow tie ribbon thing, you have to live to the west of the line. You want to do the chin head thing, you live to the east. All good. But then each generation had people who want to be like the other side. This time they said no. So they take away their triangles, and from the same symbol for religion, culture, tradition, they create weapons and they go to war. They create spears, they create arrows. And they found out that every generation there are people from the other side wanting to be, East wants to be like West, West wants to be like the East. So they stop and they decide that together they would create from the same triangles slides for entertainment, rooftops for security, and pyramids for culture. And together, East and West live together in peace. This book came out in Saudi. Again, I was very quiet. It's in the schools. Okay? But this was my reply. So, this is how I started, back of a piece of paper. By the time I stopped on this project, there was 1,000 people working on 4 continents, and it hasn't been easy. I'm going to just end with one story. At one point, we thought we were over. We thought the 99 was over. It was dead. And I needed money. And I cornered a financier at a World Economic Forum meeting, and I went up to him and I said, hey, and he had turned me down twice before. And I said, hey, I heard you came here on a private airplane. Is it true? He was with his friends. He said, yes, why? I said, this may be inappropriate, but can I fly back with you? He said, you live in Dubai? I said, I live in Kuwait. It's an hour away. I'll figure it out. He said, okay, come. So I had him and his team on an airplane. They had nowhere to go without a parachute, and I pitched them. And I got $12 million from him at the end of that ride. Okay? So this is how the 99 started with an idea of kind of seeing a Pokemon on the cover, thinking one day maybe we can be as big, and we actually made it one of the final covers of Newsweek. And when we think about how Islam is usually covered on Newsweek compared to what we did, I would say that we've pushed that cultural needle way in the direction that I think is better for all of us. Thank you very much.